were so hungry that they ate her with potatoes.
Yeah.
16-year-old Karina was dating 20-year-old Maxim, who was the lead singer of his band. She was so in love with him that she would sneak around to see him so that her mom wouldn't catch her. On the specific day, Karina told her mom that she was going to spend the night at a friend's house so that she could study. Her mom told her it was fine, but she had to be back the next morning by 7 a.m., but sadly this wasn't the case. On this specific night in January of 2009, Maxim and his friends decided to have a party, and Karina wanted to spend the night. One of Maxim's roommates, Ekaterina, noticed that Maxim and Karina went to the bathroom together while she was going to her room to go to sleep. After a while, she started to hear splashes of water and noise, but she didn't think too much of it. A while later, Ekaterina woke up and decided she was going to go check on them to make sure that they were okay, and when she was walking to the bathroom, another friend named Yuri told her that she wouldn't want to go in there. She figured that nothing serious was going on, so she just went back to bed. The next day, Ekaterina arrived home from work, and Maxim and Yuri offered her meat with potatoes. She ate her meal and didn't have any complaints. This meat wasn't some kind of ordinary meat, it belonged to Karina. The night before, Maxim and Yuri put Karina in the bathtub and drowned her. Once she was deceased, they chopped her up, cooked her meat, and prepared it as a meal. Eventually, Maxim and Yuri were caught, and once they were interrogated on why they even did this, they stated it was because they were drunk and hungry. The rest of Karina's body parts were placed in plastic bags and scattered around the city. Both Maxim and Yuri were arrested and charged with Karina's murder.
This little boy went missing 6 years ago, but he was just found alive walking down a dark road in France. This story is actually insane. This is Alex Batty. He was 11 years old when he went missing during what was supposed to be a 2-week family vacation to Spain, but the details surrounding his disappearance are odd. In 2017, Alex was living with his grandma, who was his legal guardian in Oldham, England. His dad left when he was 2 years old, and ever since he was raised by his mom Melanie and his grandma, who eventually took over guardianship. Alex's grandma agreed to let him go on a vacation with his mom and grandpa to Spain, but that was 6 years ago, and that was the last time that she ever saw him. His disappearance became widely known, but there was literally no trace of him. But just last week, Alex, who is now 17, was found walking down the road in the middle of the night near the city of Toulouse in France. A delivery driver spotted him walking alone in the rain with a flashlight, backpack, and skateboard, and he offered him a ride. Alex agreed, and once he got in the car, he initially gave the driver a fake name, but ultimately he told him that his real name was Alex Batty and that he was kidnapped by his mom 5 years ago in Morocco. Alex told him that he had walked for 4 days and 4 nights through the rugged Pyrenees, sleeping in the light and hiking in the dark, trying to get to a big city to seek out authorities. He said that to survive, he ate what he could find in fields and gardens. He then stated that he'd been living a nomadic lifestyle in Spain, Morocco, and most recently France with his mom and grandpa as part of a spiritual community. He said that they would never stay in one place for too long, would grow their own food, they meditated, and contemplated reincarnation. According to Alex, he carpooled with a community of about 10 people doing odd jobs to get by, and they would carry solar panels with them for energy. It was only after his mom said that she wanted everyone to move to Finland that Alex decided he wanted to leave the group. He told the driver that picked him up that he had had enough and that he was 17 and needed a future, but that he couldn't see a future there. The driver took him to the police after looking him up online and finding out that he was indeed a missing child. Authorities then notified Alex's grandma that he was found, which she's obviously very excited about. According to her, Alex disappeared in 2017 because of disagreements over his care, and the fact that his mom and grandpa were interested in pursuing an alternative lifestyle with him. Alex told authorities that he was never physically abused, but that he had not attended school in the past 6 years, and he was reportedly in good health when he was found. Alex has since been reunited with his grandma. As for his mom Melanie, she is currently wanted by British police in connection to his disappearance, and she may be in Finland. His grandpa David is believed to have died about 6 months ago. Manchester police are still investigating the circumstances around Alex's disappearance and whether or not there should be a criminal investigation. What do you guys think about this case?
He took her life in front of the whole class because she rejected him. Camila Pacazzi Zanga was born in 2001 in Bolivia. She had dreams of becoming a teacher, and in order to achieve those dreams, she went to a school that was hours away. She was a single mother to her 5-year-old son, and unfortunately she had to leave him behind when she would go to school, but luckily her family would take care of him. Although it was very hard for her to leave her son behind, she knew that her sacrifices would later pay off in life. While in school, Camila came across this guy named Edwin Marcos Calle Huanca. He was obsessed with her and would act very aggressive towards her. It got so bad that even at one point Camila thought about dropping out, but she continued to stay. Camila's peers even noticed how obsessed Edwin was with her and how badly he wanted her to be his girlfriend. It even came out that Edwin was so aggressive that one time a teacher told him to take out his headphones and he punched that teacher in the face. On October 15th of 2024, as class was starting, Edwin rushed towards Camila and stabbed her multiple times. Their peers were in pure shock of what was happening right in front of their eyes. Some ran away, some tried to grab objects and throw it at him thinking that it would make him stop, and some decided to pick up their phones and record everything. While Edwin was doing this horrific thing to Camila, he kept telling her how much he loved her and he didn't stop until she was gone. While Edwin was being detained, Camila was rushed to a local hospital, but she was pronounced dead. When Edwin was being questioned by police on why he did this, he stated that she ruined his life and he wanted revenge. Ultimately, Edwin was found guilty and sentenced to 30 years in prison.
If it was not for the dash cam that this lady had in her car, she would have gotten scammed out her ass. And on the what the? Oh my god! Oh my god! What is she doing? Please notice, immediately after they hit her car purposefully and reversed into it, look at them. They're literally switching seats. And then look how they come out. Like they're so hurt and they're shocked that Shorty just hit them. This is exactly how insurance fraud happens. I'm gonna point out a couple things to you guys, but first of all, look at his reaction when he sees the dash cam, because he knows what they just did. Look, and then he goes to go whisper to that girl. When you're driving, you can typically see through the front window of the car you're driving in front of, but notice how black their rear view windshield is, and then boom, all of a sudden it's clear. Y'all, they had a black garbage bag covering the window so you can't see through when they're switching, bro. At that point, you caught me, arrest me. Do you guys realize how illegal that is? Like, they literally put their freaking evidence on a platform. My man and I are truck drivers, and I have never been more influenced to buy a dash cam.
She was live streaming when someone took her life.
Ya viene.
23-year-old Valeria Marquez was a beauty influencer and she owned her own beauty salon in Zapopan, Mexico. Just a couple of days ago, on May 13th, Valeria was out doing a medical procedure when her employee Erica spoke with her to tell her that someone had stopped by the salon to deliver her something. They weren't able to deliver it because they wanted confirmation that Valeria had received it. At this point, Valeria is confused because she wasn't expecting a package, but she just heads to the salon anyways. Erica then tells her that's fine because the guy that was delivering the package was going to be back in an hour. Once Valeria is back at the salon, she hops on her live. As she's on live, she starts saying how she's very uncomfortable and has this weird feeling, and then starts asking what the guy looked like and what he was driving. Weirdly enough, during the live, she had also said, "Oh my god, what if this person is going to try and take my life?" half serious and half joking. She's already starting to feel suspicious about this whole delivery. Valeria then decides she's just going to leave and doesn't want to wait around anymore, but her friend Viviana was also watching her live and she texts her saying, "Please stay because I want to see your reaction when you get this delivery." Her friend then sends her a Starbucks and a stuffed animal, and at this point Valeria seems more at ease. Moments later, Valeria is looking towards the front door and says, "Oh, here he comes." A man approaches her and says "Valeria," and then she mutes the live. Seconds later, that man shoots her one time at the chest and 2 times in the head. She then drops forward and her head hits the table. Valeria's phone is then picked up by a woman, and many are speculating that this person is Erica, but we are not 100% sure yet, and when she looks at the phone, she has no reaction whatsoever and she ends the live. Since this just happened this week, there is a full investigation going on who could have done this to Valeria. Now, authorities may have a suspect, and this suspect is a man that goes by the name LRR. Allegedly, that man and Valeria were romantically involved for several months, and he is said to be a very dangerous person. Apparently, he didn't like when Valeria would go live and receive gifts from her followers, so this was his gift to her. As of right now, nothing has been confirmed or denied. This is all just speculation that's going on right now. Rest in peace to Valeria. Hopefully she gets the justice that she deserves, and let me know what you guys think about this case.
It's the total opposite of what normally happens. Usually killers say to the police, "I didn't kill anyone, don't lock me up," and they lock them up anyway. Well, this guy said, "Don't let me out of prison, I am going to kill people," and they let him out anyway, and guess what happened? Nico Jenkins was born in Colorado. There were signs there from day one. From a very early age, he had behavioral issues. He even brought a G into school at age just 7. Now, he claimed at the time that voices told him to do this, and this would kind of be a theme throughout his life. He was placed into foster care due to how unstable his family home was, and there was a lot of violence and things that he witnessed from a young age that just no child should ever have to witness. It felt like crime was all he knew. He even joined gangs and got involved in committing a lot of crimes, such as armed robbery at the age of just 17. He and his cousins all carjacked a man at G Point in Omaha and then robbed him. Now, he was put in prison and sentenced to 21 years for a collection of crimes, including this one, due to just the severity of the crimes, even though he was pretty young. But he did not stay behind bars for long. Nebraska has a law which basically cuts your sentence in half if you behave well behind bars. So after just 10 years, Nico was due to be released. But he had a chilling warning for everybody inside that prison. He said, "If you release me, I will kill." He was warning everybody in the lead up to his release date. He said he was mentally unwell. He needed mental health support. He was hearing the voice of an Egyptian god and would have to obey that voice. Even went as far as to write letters to judges and prison professionals, just warning them of his plans after he would be released. He said he was a danger to society and he needed mental health treatment. But despite these terrifying warnings, he was still released as planned in July 2013. By this point, he was 26 years old, and he stuck to his word. He was ready to reoffend. On the 11th of August, he randomly shot 2 unsuspecting strangers. This was Juan Pena and George Ruiz, who had been sat in their cars. Now, it's believed he'd lured them out of a bar by using 2 females that he knew. Females apparently promised these men an intimate encounter. After killing, he then robbed the victims. This was just days after he was released, bear in mind. Then again, just days later, he was at a party when he actually bumped into a guy that he did know from prison. This was Curtis Bradford, and by the looks of things, the 2 were actually friends in prison. But that night, he again shot Curtis and killed him. Finally, on the 21st of August, his killing spree would come to a terrifying conclusion. An innocent mum of 3, Andrea Kruger, had the misfortune of just happening to drive past where Nico was. At the time that she drove past, he was actually stood with some of his equally violent family members. And he decided he wanted to steal Andrea's car, so he terrifyingly carjacked her, ripped her out of the car, shot and killed her on the street. After racking up a total of 4 murders in just days, police were already hot on his tail. They managed to arrest him for making threats, and they already had an inkling that he was involved in Andrea's murder because they had some CCTV footage. They also had some kind of weapons-related evidence that he was at least involved in that killing, and when they got him into custody, he had some shocking things to say. He told officers that the killings were a sacrifice to that Egyptian demonic snake god, and he was just following orders. And he was very bitter about the fact that the prison had let him out early. He was saying, I did warn you, I told you I was hearing these voices. He even filed a $24 million lawsuit against the prison. And despite people arguing about whether or not he was actually mentally ill, he then did some pretty shocking things to himself. He tried to mutilate himself and cut off his pee. Again, he said this was a sacrifice to the god. He also carved into his head 666, which is the number of the devil. My mum loves to remind me of this. When I had 777 tattooed on my arm, she was like, you should have had 666. However, this didn't really work because he did it in a mirror, so he had it the wrong way round. Despite all of the arguments about his mental health, he was deemed fit to stand trial and was found guilty of the murders. He was given the death penalty.
The mother of this missing 6-year-old girl has been charged with human trafficking and kidnapping. If you're not already familiar with the ongoing disappearance of 6-year-old Jocelyn Smith, well, on February 19th, she vanished from South Africa while she was meant to be in the custody of her mother's boyfriend. This is a very recent ongoing investigation. She only disappeared almost a month ago at this point. And there has been more misinformation spread in this case than I have seen in such a long time, but I really did my best to weed through all the misinformation, and hopefully I'm only going to be delivering the facts in this video. There have been massive searches done and continuing to be done. There have been cadaver dogs, drones, I'm sure even the Navy at this point, and bloody clothes were found in an open field near where Jocelyn vanished from. Jocelyn's mother, Kelly Smith, has been in the public eye quite a bit. She's done quite a few televised interviews pleading for answers, but people have been suspicious of Kelly and her boyfriend since Jocelyn disappeared. As of today, March 17th, Jocelyn's own mother, Kelly, is believed to be involved in her own daughter's disappearance. She was charged with human trafficking and kidnapping in her own daughter's case, and as well as 3 other suspects have been arrested along with Kelly's boyfriend. It's being widely reported that Jocelyn's mother, Kelly, sold her daughter, which absolutely breaks my heart, but it does make it more likely that Jocelyn is still out there alive and could be brought home. I strongly urge anyone who's watching this video to get 6-year-old Jocelyn Smith's face out there in any way you can, even if that only means sharing this video or reposting it. I'll continue to update you guys as we learn more. This case reminds me so much of 3-year-old Elijah Vu, who's still currently missing. I'm looking for updates on that, but we haven't really gotten anything else there yet. But let me know what you think of this case in the comments and what case you'd want to see me cover next.
It's so tragic. They literally had everything to look forward to, a new baby, a fresh start, but suddenly a murder and a huge manhunt for the wrong man. Then there was another death that nobody was expecting. Honestly, buckle up for a lot of twists and turns in this case. The evening of the 23rd of October 1989. Charles Stewart and his wife Carol seemed to have this picture-perfect life. They both had amazing jobs, they were married, they seemed to be happy to the outside world, and Carol was actually 7 months pregnant with their first baby. They had this amazing home in the suburbs. Honestly, it was like the American dream. On the night in question, they were actually heading home from a childbirth class at the local hospital in Boston when tragedy struck. Charles frantically called the police, begging for help. He cried out on the phone, "My wife's been shot and I've been shot." He said, "Oh man, it hurts, and my wife has stopped gurgling. She stopped breathing." Police and ambulance obviously raced to the scene, desperate to try and save the lives of not only this poor innocent woman, but also her unborn child. Although they were initially able to save the premature baby, the baby did then die just 17 days later. Charles was also shot, like I said, but his injuries were not life-threatening. So police knew that he was kind of the key to trying to solve this case and figuring out who the hell did it. They were desperate to find out who was responsible for A, such a brutal killing, and B, why would they have done this? So they got as much info as they possibly could off Charles. Now, he said they'd been sat in the car when a black man in a tracksuit carjacked them and robbed them. So immediately they've got a motive. It's obviously like a robbery gone wrong, but it didn't really explain why the man felt the need to shoot them both. And also, I know this sounds bad, but why didn't he kill Charles too? Because obviously he's leaving a witness. And locals were absolutely terrified of this seemingly random gunman on the loose. The police presence in the town just ramped up massively. There was always constantly loads and loads of police officers just patrolling, helping the community to feel safe, and a massive manhunt was underway for this guy. But something was off. Carol's friends actually came forward to police to tell them that they felt like her marriage to Charles wasn't actually as happy as Charles had made out. Charles had been constantly moaning about her just prior to her death and had even joked that they should try and kill her. But he was sticking to his story like glue, and he even actually pointed the finger at a local man called Willie Bennett and caused him to be arrested for the murder. And police were really confused. Was the husband lying? Was he telling the truth? Who was the real killer? And Charles was so adamant that this Willie was to blame that he even had these strong physical reactions when he saw him in a police lineup. Then in the January after, Charles's brother came forward with a shocking confession. Brother Matthew stated that he had been involved in Carol's murder, but he said he hadn't realized it was going to be a murder. Matthew said that he was supposed to be involved in a jewelry insurance scam to earn some money. He said that his brother had got him in on this, and on the night of the murder, Matthew said he met the brother Charles and he was given a Gucci bag with Carol's jewelry and a gun, which he then threw into the river. That was like his role in this. Matthew insisted to police that he had no idea that his brother was going to kill the wife. But no one knew if this was really the truth. Was Matthew kind of coming forward now just to try and get off a little bit lighter? Was he just kind of half admitting to something? Regardless, it felt like it was all massively falling apart for Charles and his original story, because quite clearly he'd been lying. Then there was another massive shock for the locals. Early on the 4th of January, Charles drove to the Tobin Bridge over the Mystic River and jumped. Charles was gone. And gone was the opportunity to get justice for Carol and Carol's family. Now, Matthew, the brother, was ultimately found guilty of obstruction of justice and insurance fraud, but he also later died in 2011 from a substance OD. Now, Willie Bennett, who, if you remember, had been accused by Charles, was actually fully cleared, and the government even apologised to him. And the government apologised, and rightly so, to the black people in the area for their treatment of them throughout this whole investigation.
One responsible for unaliving this woman hugged her mom the next day. On August 19th, 2020, 25-year-old Sydney Sutherland went for a run. This wasn't uncommon, but the hours passed and the hours passed, and Sydney still hadn't made it home, and her boyfriend started to get really worried. Sydney's boyfriend, Sydney's family, Sydney's loved ones all searched the nearby area, found nothing, so they reported her missing. It was a really small Arkansas town. It was all farmers with a population of 300. Sydney would run on these desolate country back roads, which, yeah, sounds pretty dangerous, but everyone knew Sydney. Everyone knew how kind and warm she was. No one would want to hurt her. She should have been safe. 2 witnesses came forward that saw Sydney on her run. One was a UPS driver, and then one was like a local young farmer. While her community searched the area, they were able to better pinpoint the area that she probably went missing from. And man, did this community search for Sydney. I mean, hundreds of volunteers came forward to help in the search, some from even neighboring counties. But one of the search volunteers had a sinister secret, because while he helped in the search for Sydney, he already knew where she was. During the search, Sydney's mother realized that one of the search volunteers was that farmer that saw Sydney on her run. So she went up to him to ask if maybe he knew any more details, saw anything else that would be like helpful. And that farmer, 28-year-old Quake Llewellyn, was giving Sydney's mother these really short, odd answers, and then just like wrapped his arms around her to give her a hug, like unprovoked, unannounced. And this is mother's intuition, because Sydney's mother knew right then and there that something was not right with Quake. Quake's own father even gave them permission to search Quake's truck where blood was found. Next day, after being missing for 2 days, sadly the remains of Sydney were found, and Quake was arrested on multiple charges, including first-degree NSA. Quake had pretty recently married a local single mother, making him a husband and stepfather. His wife said that she had no idea the monster that she was married to, and luckily did file for divorce pretty soon after. And it turns out Quake had always been a monster. He had a history of being creepy towards women and abusing animals dating all the way back to childhood. While questioned, Quake told the investigators pretty much that this was a crime of opportunity, that he was driving down that back road in his truck, saw Sydney running, made a U-turn, struck her with his truck so he could better easily kidnap her. But shortly after, Quake recanted his confession, claiming that it was an accident and that he just accidentally hit her while she was running, and then pleaded not guilty. Who did ultimately end up pleading guilty on all charges to avoid the death penalty, which just disgusts me because this was never an option that he gave Sydney Sutherland. Luckily though, Quake will die in prison, as he was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. This actually made me cry while researching Sydney's case, but her community now has an annual Finish Sydney's Run 5K to raise money for a scholarship in her name. If you watched to the end of this video, thank you so much for listening to Sydney Sutherland's story. In the comments, let me know what case you'd want to see me do next. I'm gonna try to post at least one more video today on TikTok because I really slacked this weekend because I was sick. I'm also gonna record at least one video, hopefully, to post on my YouTube channel sometimes this week on the off chance that TikTok does get banned. So if you want to see me there, it's in my link tree.
Did this woman get away with the murder of her own twin sister? I'm True Crime Caitlin, and this is the case of Anastasia and Alexandria Duval. Anastasia and Alexandria had such a close relationship that some people would describe them as one soul in two bodies. The sisters were best friends, they were inseparable, you couldn't have one without the other, and they did everything together, including going in the shower. Their love for each other was so intense that when it was flipped, their hatred and anger towards each other would be unbelievable. The sisters would get into fiery arguments and violent fights, hitting, kicking, punching, elbowing each other, and even pulling each other by the hair. Anastasia and Alexandria lived in Florida, where they owned and ran a yoga boutique named Twin Power Yoga. However, after some time they got into some financial issues. They couldn't pay the bills, they couldn't pay the staff, and they couldn't refund the clients that they owed money. So they up and left, moving from Florida over to Utah. Their time in Utah was short but not very sweet. After getting into some trouble with the police through drunk and disorderly, the sisters jumped on a plane and moved to beautiful beachy Hawaii. However, their struggles with alcohol followed them and even worsened. An ex-boyfriend of Anastasia would describe how she used to go on benders, drinking for days on end, going through bottle after bottle of champagne. On several occasions he even filmed her when she was in one of our states, and on one of the recordings he managed to capture her saying that she would kill him. By May 2016, the women are 37 years old. Anastasia is in a new relationship with a man named Federico Bailey, who was trying to help her get sober. The couple had planned to go out on a remote camping trip together when Alexandria decided to tag along, and much to the annoyance of Federico, she brought alcohol. He didn't let himself get too annoyed at this though, because he and Anastasia were actually planning on moving. They were going to be moving to the other side of the island and open up their own business and start a new life away from Alexandria, who was a bad influence and an enabler. At some point in the evening, Federico left the drunken sisters so that he could go and find a toilet, and when he returned, Anastasia and Alexandria were gone, and so was the car. Alexandria, behind the steering wheel, drove herself and Anastasia along the winding Hana Highway, where witnesses would recall seeing the women inside of the car, and they were fighting. They were all arms and elbows, hitting each other, pulling each other's hair, and I believe at this moment they were actually pulled over on the side of the road, when suddenly Alexandria took hold of the gear stick, put the car into gear, stamped on the accelerator, and drove the car off the side of the cliff. The car plummeted 200 feet down, landing on a bed of rocks, and witnesses would describe the sound of the crash, comparing it to the sound of a bomb going off. The rescue team were dispatched, including police officers, hoping that they would be able to save both of the women. However, Anastasia Duval would be pronounced dead at the scene. She had died instantly from the impact of the crash. Alexandria, however, was miraculously still alive and was airlifted to a nearby hospital. When investigators travelled to the hospital to speak to Alexandria after she had been checked over, they were shocked when she point blank refused to speak to them. They wanted to know what happened, how and why did she drive off of the side of the cliff, and much more, but Alexandria stayed silent. She didn't even ask about Anastasia, and when one of the officers told her that Anastasia didn't make it, she was dead, they described Alexandria's face as being blank. Many officers would say that one of the worst part of their jobs is having to deliver death notifications to family members. And when one of the officers contacted the twins' dad to break the heartbreaking news that Anastasia was dead, he took their breath away when he responded, quote, "If anyone should have died, it should have been that bitch Alexandria." Alexandria's silence at the hospital wasn't the only thing that they found suspicious. Back at the crime scene, investigators discovered tyre marks on the ground. These marks indicated to the investigators that the driver of the car had made a sharp, intentional turn over the cliff. The stretch of road that they were on at that moment was relatively straight, and these marks showed that the driver of the car had made a quick, intentional turn off of the cliff. A black box that was fitted on the car to monitor speed, acceleration, etc., I'm sure many of you have had one, showed that in the moments leading up to the crash, there was was 100% acceleration up until it went over the cliff. There was no braking, there was no attempt to stop the car. During Anastasia's autopsy, her hair/scalp showed signs of forceful pulling. Inside of her fist, there was also long blonde hairs recovered, which was consistent with the witness saying that he saw the women fighting inside of the car. Back at the hospital, Alexandria's blood was also tested, and it showed that she was 3 times over the legal blood alcohol limit, so she was highly intoxicated when she was driving and eventually drove her and her sister off of the cliff. After speaking with Federico, who didn't find out that Anastasia was dead until a year later because he stayed back at the campsite, he told the police some very strange things that he heard Alexandria saying in the days or weeks leading up to the crash. He recalled Alexandria openly stated that she was going to kill Anastasia, and only days before the crash he overheard a conversation between Anastasia and Alexandria where Alexandria allegedly said, quote, "Don't forget we're leaving the planet on the 30th. Following Anastasia's death, Federico would say that Alexandria started to wear Anastasia's clothes, she started to do her hair how Anastasia used to do hers, and much more. After being discharged from the hospital, the police went to Alexandria's home hoping that she would speak to them, hoping that she would clear some things up, but when they arrived to her house, they found that it was empty. Alexandria was gone. Luckily, they were able to quickly track her down and found her nearby the airport and immediately arrested her on suspicion of second-degree murder. Hawaii police believe that the motive for this murder was that Alexandria was losing control over Anastasia. Anastasia was going to leave her. She was going to be moving in with her boyfriend on the other side of the island, and Alexandria wouldn't or couldn't accept that. They believe that she drove over the side of the cliff fully intending to end both of their lives, and it would have went like that had the car went into the water and not landed on some rocks. Alexandria would opt for a bench trial, meaning that there was no jury involved. The verdict would be decided by the judge. And in February 2018, the judge who looked over the trial acquitted Alexandria Duval of the second-degree murder of her sister Anastasia Duval. He believed the defense, he believed that the 2 women fighting inside of the car caused Alexandria to lose control, and that is what sent her over the cliff. Not any murderous, jealousy-motivated plan. Hawaiian police fully disagree with this, however. They wholeheartedly believe that Alexandria Duval has got away with murder. Comment down below and let me know what you think.
Everything about him, really. Everything about him is just, ugh. Makes me feel so uneasy, but there was also so much information on this case that if I got anything wrong or if you think I missed something important, comment in the comments. We can talk about it together because there was so much on this. I also feel like I have to give a warning. A lot of this case is about mental health and unaliving. So if that's something that you think is really sensitive to listen to, please skip this video and I will see you in my next one. Take care of yourselves. Love you. On April 27th of 2024 at 4:23 p.m., police received a 911 call from a man that was out fishing. He was calling to report there was a deceased human body floating in the water. This was in Lumber River State Park in North Carolina. That body was 30-year-old Micah Miller. The very next day, April 28th, Micah's husband, John Paul Miller, announces Micah's death to his church. He was a pastor at Solid Rock Church in South Carolina. Everyone who attended that church knew John Paul because he was a pastor, but everyone knew Micah as well. Micah was very involved in the church, always willing to help, friendly and nice to everyone. So John Paul gets up on the stage. He says that he has an announcement and would like for everyone to listen and not discuss it in the church. He says, quote, "I got a call late last night. My wife has passed away. It was self-induced and it was up in North Carolina," end quote. He mentions her funeral. He asks for prayers for their children and continues on to say, quote, "You all knew that she wasn't well mentally and then she needed her medicine that was hard to get to," end quote. Weird way to announce your wife's death. Weird in itself, but even weirder when the details of Micah and John Paul's relationship started unraveling. And although her cause of death was ruled as a self-inflicted wound, a lot of Micah's family, friends, loved ones, and people of the church came together and spoke out about their opinion. A lot of people seem to agree that Micah did not choose her own faith, and they suspected the person who did was her husband, Pastor John Paul, who we will be referring to as JP moving forward. Back in October of 2023, months before her death, Micah had filed for divorce from JP. She wanted a divorce because she claimed that JP wasn't only unfaithful, but also treated her terribly, often threatening her and attempting to scare her into staying with him. This behavior of JP
JP being manipulative, possessive, and controlling was backed up by previous police reports as well as supported by people who knew Micah, who Micah confided in and spoke to about her relationship. One of these people that Micah trusted with a lot of information was her sister. To give you an idea of JP's behavior, when Micah filed for divorce, she went to go stay at her sister's house to get away from JP. He didn't like that and he called and texted both of them with threats to attempt to get Micah back home. After Micah's sister made it clear to him that he was not welcomed at their house, JP texted her and said, quote, "I'll be at your house at 12:55. I'm ready and I will keep you up all night. I'm gonna get her back," end quote. Micah's sister called to report this incident to police, but the case was dismissed and Micah did eventually return home. Between that point and the day of her death, there were a lot of concerning instances. On February 8th, Micah Miller was involuntarily hospitalized for 48 hours. She was hospitalized because JP claimed that she had not been taking her medicine and she needed help. While she was at the hospital, JP took Micah's keys, purse, stole her car, and moved all of her belongings out of the home that they shared. During this time and following Micah's release, there was tension between Micah's family and JP because Micah's family believed that JP was exaggerating Micah's mental health, claiming that she was in a horrible headspace only to use that to his advantage to manipulate her into staying with him when the only thing that she wanted really was to leave him. JP's side of events is that he was only concerned about her well-being, but because he claimed that he had power of attorney over Micah, he would threaten her family if they continued acting in that way. He would tell them that he would make sure that they never saw Micah again. We later find out from Micah's sister that prior to her being hospitalized, she had expressed the violence against her by her husband to other people. And she had been in the process of gathering and sorting evidence that she had to bring to an attorney to support her claims against JP as to his character and other associates involved that he paid off or blackmailed. But Micah never got a chance to do anything with that because while she was hospitalized, those documents, emails, and files were removed from her phone and her personal laptop, allegedly by JP. The next month, in March, Micah called police after finding the tires from her car had been slashed with a piece of metal. When she took her car to the dealership to get that fixed, she was made aware that there was a tracking device hidden in her car. I believe in total there were 3 different instances where Micah was made aware that there were tracking devices found hidden in her vehicle. That same day when she found her tires in that way, Micah calls police again later on and tells them that she thinks that she is being watched and followed by a suspect that she had been trying to avoid. This suspect was never named publicly, but I think it's safe to assume and people suspect it to be her husband JP. Micah later reported that she had been trying to get a restraining order because she was, quote, afraid for her life, end quote. And looping it back around to information released by Micah's sister, we later find out that she confided in her that she was scared for her life, but not only that, Micah told her sister that, quote, "If I wind up with a in my head, it was not by me, it was JP," end quote. Micah's brother later came forward as well and said that she had told him on numerous occasions that she feared JP and wanted to escape him. In April, just 12 days before her death, Micah filed for separation from JP again. 9 days before her death, in an affidavit that she sent to her lawyer, Micah said, quote, "Since the day that we became husband and wife, I have been in every way I can think of, emotionally, spiritually, financially, and physically," end quote. On April 25th, only 2 days before her body was found, Micah served JP with divorce papers. That brings us to April 27th, the day of Micah's death. That day at 11:38 a.m., Micah is seen on her Ring camera leaving her house at 12:12 p.m. She goes to a pawn shop and purchases a weapon. At 1:27 p.m., she stops by a gas station, gets gas, and buys a drink. And then at 2:54 p.m., 911 receives a call from Micah herself. In the call, Micah asks if her phone can be traced and her location can be found. She states that she is about to unalive herself and she wants to make sure that her family is able to find her. She hangs up the call before further information can be gathered by dispatch and does not pick up the phone when the dispatcher attempted to call back. By 3:21 p.m., officers arrive at Lumber River State Park and start looking for Micah. Detectives are then approached by a person who said they found a bag in the river with Micah's ID inside of it and said that they were concerned because they heard a person crying and then a weapon fire. At 4:23 p.m. is when that other person called 911 to report finding the deceased body floating in the water. Later that day, the weapon believed to be the cause of death was discovered in the water. The serial number of the weapon found matched the number on the receipt in Micah's car for the weapon that she had purchased earlier that day from the pawn shop. On May 6th, the medical examiner released Micah's cause of death, ruled that it was a self-inflicted wound. Following Micah's death, so many people that knew her, only her or her and JP, turned to social media to discuss what their thoughts were. A friend of Micah's posted, quote, "She 100% would not have committed suicide. She was excited to start a new life, no longer living in fear of him, and was finally on her way out, end quote. Another friend of Micah's that talked to Micah the night before she passed said, quote, "I will not sit here and pretend that I know exactly what happened on Saturday, but I know a lot. I'm well aware in the past that Micah has had mental health issues, and I witnessed her struggle firsthand." She continues on to say, "The Micah I saw at the beginning of her mental health journey was not the Micah I witnessed in the last month. The Micah I was seeing was a grown woman trying to break the chain of an marriage. She was done. She hired a lawyer. She moved out. She was getting a divorce. I talked to her multiple times in her final week here on earth. She was making plans to get her hair cut, getting help with her car payment, and planning to meet us for the second service of church on Sunday. My final text to her on Friday at 9:19 p.m. was a woman making plans to live." What happened between Friday night and Saturday? This whole case was very strange. It felt very uneasy, and it left a lot of people with the question, what part, if any, did the husband play in Micah's death? I read that back in November of 2024, the FBI searched JP's house in Myrtle Beach in South Carolina, but I don't think that had anything to do in connection with Micah's death. The latest updates that I could find were from back in August of 2024. There was a settlement reached between JP and Micah's family. We don't know what was in the settlement because terms are sealed under a confidentiality agreement, but after the settlement was reached, JP's lawyer stated, quote, "Micah's family, Pastor Miller, and the church have set their differences aside to allow Micah's memory to live on. All parties now consider this matter closed. Unfortunately, we do not know every piece of information leading up to the death of Micah. We do know that her life served a purpose. Those that have spent every Sunday morning protesting outside of Solid Rock Church, chanting justice for Micah, should recognize this time of healing and move on with their lives. We only ask that you remember Micah as a wonderful, beautiful soul that she was." And a lawyer representing Micah's family said, quote, "We do not want the Francis family or anyone to be dragged through litigation for years. I know that some of you are going to be disappointed. We want to put this behind us and move on to the next chapter that matters. When we say that we've gotten justice for Micah as a result of this settlement, it is true," end quote. If Micah's family did get closure and does feel like justice has been served, that is great. But after reading through everything that has been said by her family and friends on social media, I don't know if that is true. But that is all I have for today's case. Let me know what your thoughts are on this. And thank you for spending time with me today and for listening to Micah's story. I hope you guys are all having the best day. If not, go do something to make it the best day. Make somebody happy, and I will see you in my next video. Massive kiss on the forehead to every single one of you.
This is the story of Pamela Cabrera. 32-year-old Pamela is a Florida native who grew up in a tight-knit family. She bounced from Tampa to Jacksonville until April of 2020, where she decided to stay in Jacksonville with her immediate family because her sister got full custody of her 5-year-old daughter, Vanity. In early 2020, while still living in Tampa, Pamela's mother started to notice her mental health was rapidly declining. She would lose track of time. She would stay up multiple consecutive days without sleeping at all, and her mood swings were crazy. She said her mood would change within seconds, and it got so severe that she started to worry about the safety of 5-year-old Vanity. That's when Pamela's family decided to take her to a psychiatrist. It was there where she was diagnosed with schizophrenia and bipolar disorder. After a diagnosis like that, you have to take medication, but Pamela refused to take medication, so her erratic behaviors not only continued, they escalated. So in April of 2020, a Tampa judge ruled her incompetent to take care of her daughter Vanity. So 5-year-old Vanity was placed in the care of her aunt Whitney, who was also Pamela's sister, but they lived in Jacksonville, Florida, and they loved having her. They said that she was like their own daughter, but Pamela wasn't happy about this. Losing custody of her daughter made her mental state worse. She got physical. In September of 2020, she punched 3 strangers in the face, unprovoked, in public. She was arrested for that. But while in jail for that crime, she tried to harm herself repeatedly. When a nurse tried to intervene, she not only spit on her, she attacked her. A Florida judge ruled her mentally incompetent to stand trial for her battery charges. He truly felt that she will harm herself or somebody else, so he committed her to a psychiatric facility for a few months. After just 2 months, they felt that she no longer met the requirement and she was released back to jail. Her battery charges were dropped and she was released from jail in the care of her family. But they could not handle Pamela. They couldn't handle her. So she ended up in a shelter, and she also ended up pregnant again, which caused her to stop taking her medication
again. Her family said that she was very lost without her daughter Vanity, and it was taking a major toll on her mental to the point where her sister didn't want her to have unsupervised visits. And Pamela is pissed because she just want to spend some time with her little girl. So on March 31st, 2022, she showed up at her sister's house unannounced. And when she got there, her sister was just about to go get Vanity from school, but she told Pamela, "You can't take her." This is when Pamela called the police. When the police got there, mind you, her sister Whitney is gone to pick up Vanity from school. And Pamela is talking to the police like, "I have visitation rights. She's not letting me see my daughter." And the police was like, "There's nothing I can do. They're not even at home. When they get home, call me back." And when they got back home, Pamela did just that. She called the police back to the scene. When the second officer arrived, Whitney had all her paperwork ready to show him. He seen that Pamela had no rights over Vanity, and Whitney made it clear that no unsupervised visits. She will not be leaving with Vanity. And the police is like, "Hey, there's nothing I can do here." Whitney didn't want Pamela in her house nor on her property. You can hear on the body cam that she said, "You can't come in here." The police asked Pamela to leave or she would get hit with trespassing, and she left, only to return a couple hours later. Now, when she returned, she didn't get no police involved. This time, she pretended like she was okay with the supervised visits. She knocked on the door, entered the home, and act like she was embracing her little girl. But she grabbed her and ran out the house with her, forced her into the car, and sped off. Whitney immediately called 911, and the police found Pamela's car near Biscayne Boulevard and Dunn Avenue. And when they pulled behind her and announced themselves, she fled, taking them on a 30-mile high-speed chase. She's running red lights. She's switching lanes, putting everybody in danger. As the chase neared Interstate 95, Florida 9B exit, Pamela lost control and crashed her and Vanity straight into a retention pond. As her car was sinking, Pamela escaped. She escaped and hung on to a floating tire. She made no attempt to save her daughter, who was strapped in the front seat. Instead, she yelled, "Help me, save me," which is fucking crazy. As the police are arriving, they wasted no time jumping in that water to save Pamela and Vanity. But as the car is sinking so quickly, they could not get to her. So unfortunately, she passed away. But Pamela, they pulled her to the land and she was screaming and hollering and throwing a fit. When the police put Pamela in the back of the squad car, at first she seemed remorseful, crying, asking for her daughter. But then it's like her mood switched in the blink of an eye to the point where she spit blood on one of the officers. And she also said that the little bitch better be dead or some on the lines of that. It's all on body cam footage on YouTube, but I was taken back. Pamela was charged with manslaughter of a child, aggravated felony fleeing, vehicular homicide, kidnapping, battery of an officer, battery on an EMT. But the judge felt that she was not competent to stand trial, so he put her in a psychiatric facility for about a year or so. In January of 2024, she tried to plead insanity, but that was quickly denied because they felt that she was competent at this point. So she then pled guilty. At her sentencing hearing on October 25th that same year, Pamela started to speak erratically, making crazy hand gestures, started shouting over testifying witnesses to the point where the judge had to put her ass out of the courtroom. On October 29th, 2024, the judge handed down the maximum sentence that he could hand, which was 30 years in prison. And Pamela got to say a couple words. She said that she has been taking her medication for 2 years and she planned on staying on it, so something like this wouldn't happen again. She had a miscarriage from the impact of the crash. And, I don't even know what to say about this. Because when y'all go watch that body cam footage on YouTube, Pamela Cabrera come back so we can talk about it.
I feel like you read this case to any normal person with common sense and they would be like, yeah, that makes no sense, because it doesn't. 21-year-old Lauren Agee lived in Tennessee with her mother, stepfather, and 3 siblings. While describing Lauren, her mother has said she was full of sugar with a little bit of spice. Lauren was such a friendly girl. She knew no strangers. Everyone she met became her friend. She absolutely adored her friends, her boyfriend, and she had such a bright future ahead of her. In the summer of 2015, Lauren's friend Hannah invited her to go to Wakefest. Wakefest is a big event that takes place every year in Tennessee on Center Hill Lake. It is designed to promote the sport of wakeboarding, but at night it kind of turns into a big party scene. A bunch of people go with their friends for the weekend. They either stay in cabins or houseboats around the local marina. It sounds pretty fun, to be fair. So that weekend, in July 25th of 2015, Lauren, her friend Hannah, Hannah's boyfriend Aaron, and his friend Chris went to Wakefest. And Lauren told her mom that they were planning on staying in a cabin by the water. The weekend started off on a good note. Lauren and Hannah were seen by other people having a lot of fun together. They were posting pictures on social media, talking about how excited they were for the weekend. The weather was good, the people were good, the energy was high. The 25th of July was a Saturday. That night, the 4 of them hung out pretty late until around 2 in the morning, and then they were ready to call it a night. Before that moment, Lauren had been under the impression that they really were going to be staying at a cabin, because that's what Hannah told her. But when it came time to actually go to bed, Hannah said, change your plans, we're actually not staying in a cabin, we're going to be camping outside and sleeping outside. The place where they wanted to camp was located across the lake's marina. It looks like a hill, honestly, and even though it was incredibly dangerous, people were known to previously camp there, but it was dangerous. There's a 35-foot drop to the lake on one side and a 90-foot drop to the lake on the other side. Lauren was not thrilled about the idea of sleeping there at all. She took a walk to try and see if she could find somebody else that she knew that maybe would let her stay with them. She ran into one of her friends from high school and asked if she could stay with them, but her friend let her know that they did not have any more room. So Lauren didn't really have another option but to go back to the campsite with Hannah, her boyfriend, and Chris. Hannah and her boyfriend were going to be staying together in a tent. Lauren and Chris were supposed to sleep on a hammock that was tied to 2 trees dangling over the water over that 90-foot drop, which sounds so scary. You could not pay me enough money to sleep there. Lauren did not want to sleep in the hammock. She did not want to sleep next to Chris. She wasn't comfortable with any of it, but she did it anyway. The next morning, when they all woke up, Lauren was gone. She just wasn't there. And allegedly, Hannah and the 2 boys just assumed that she woke up early and headed down to the festival by herself. But the entire morning went by, and most of the afternoon as well, with no sighting of Lauren. And this is a big event. A lot of people attend Wakefest, including other friends of Lauren's, and throughout the day, Hannah, her boyfriend, and Chris would walk around, and if they ran into someone else that knew Lauren, they would ask if they've seen her around, but other than that, they really made no effort, did not go out of their way to look for her whatsoever. Around 4:30 p.m. that afternoon, a father and a son went fishing when they found a deceased human body floating in the water. It was 21-year-old Lauren Agee. They called the police, who arrived at the scene, and on their way out to go see the body and assess the situation, they ran into Aaron, Hannah's boyfriend. Aaron was in a canoe paddling out in the same direction that officers were headed, and he was stopped and told to turn around, but Aaron responded by saying, quote, "That could be one of my friends over there," end quote. Even though the body was not visible from where they were at, officers themselves had not set eyes on the body yet. The body had not been identified as Lauren, and nobody else had been notified that there was a body found in the water at all. Yet Aaron seemed to be concerned that his friend's lifeless body was floating in the water, even though he had no reason to, and also had not shown concern about Lauren's whereabouts at all before that moment. A little bit strange, if you ask me. Lauren's body was taken for an autopsy, and she had marks on her back and her shoulders that, to me, almost looked like she could have been dragged. Her body could have been dragged. She had what looked to be a bite-shaped mark on her chest, a mark around her neck that looked like someone could have crushed her throat, and the clothes that she was wearing were not hers. Police spoke to Hannah, Aaron, and Chris, whose story was that they were all together the night before partying. They went to sleep, Hannah and Aaron in the tent, and Chris and Lauren in the hammock. When they woke up, Lauren was gone. That's it. That was their story. Their reasoning for not reporting Lauren missing or not telling anyone that she was missing at all was that they just assumed that she went to go meet up with one of her friends. However, important to note that all of Lauren's personal belongings, including her flip-flops, wallet, and her cell phone, were still at the campsite. Even with all that information, the sheriff's office ruled that there was no foul play. They stated they believed that Lauren fell off the edge of the cliff and either passed away from the fall or drowned. Her death was ruled an accident, and the medical examiner determined that Lauren, quote, fell from a cliff, landed on rocks, and rolled into the lake, end quote. The official report said that Lauren Lauren passed away of blunt force trauma from falling off a steep cliff into the lake and possibly drowned, and literally left it at that. They closed the case. Prior to Lauren's mom hearing the news, she was already concerned for her daughter. First of all, because she didn't think that Hannah was the best of friends to Lauren, and she was worried about her going to Wakefest from the start, but that day she had texted and called Lauren and had not heard back. And when she heard the news and her family was informed, they were devastated. Of course they were. But later on, when they learned that it was ruled an accident and the case was closed, they were furious. They did not agree with the claim that her death was an accident. First of all, Lauren's mom couldn't understand why Hannah, who was Lauren's friend, Aaron and Chris, did not report her missing. They just went about their day and the remaining of their trip as usual. Lauren's mom was getting weird feelings from them because of their weird behavior. The 27th of July, after Lauren's passing, Chris made an Instagram post and showed Hannah and Aaron on a boat. The caption to that post was, quote, "Best weekend ever." The caption was later changed to, quote, "Wakefest 2015 went pretty good this year. Met some new friends. That made it awesome," end quote. Your friend's life ended. You went there with one person and she's no longer here. She passed away and you're posting pictures saying that it was an awesome weekend? Strange. It's strange. You can't tell me it's not weird. It is weird. Lauren's mom hired a private investigator to help her investigate her suspicions regarding Lauren's death. The PI reviewed the autopsy photos and saw that strange bite mark on her chest and marks that looked to be signs of strangulation across her neck. She also noticed in the autopsy that there was no water found in Lauren's lungs. So how or why could it have been ruled that her death was an accidental drowning when there was nothing proving that? No water found in Lauren's lungs, injuries to Lauren's body that indicate that she was involved in a struggle prior to her death and are not consistent with a fall, symmetrical injuries to Lauren's back and shoulders that would be consistent with a body being dragged, and her clothes and injuries not being consistent with a fall. On top of that, it was determined that if Lauren did fall off from that cliff where she was camping, it would have been impossible for her body to float against the current to the cove where her body was found. They also found out that the detective who investigated Lauren's death had never worked a homicide case and had no training in homicide investigation. And the investigation was just not done properly at all. Even though Lauren had what looked to be a literal bite mark on her chest, there was no testing at all for SA, no DNA taken from underneath Lauren's nails or anywhere on her body. The detective never spoke or interviewed the person who made the 911 call when they found the body. They didn't interview the residents of houseboats that were near where Lauren's body was found, nor did they look for evidence on the rocks or in the water. I mean, like, at that point, what did they do? That would be much of a shorter answer than answering what they failed to do. The private investigator believed, and Lauren's family agreed, that Lauren was already no longer alive when her body was placed in that water. They believed that there was some sort of fight or struggle, that Lauren was fighting back, and as a result of that, she fell back and hit her head, causing that blunt force trauma to her head. They believed that she passed away on land and somebody freaked out, didn't know what to do, and put her body in the water to try and cover it up. They filed a wrongful death suit against Hannah, Aaron, and Chris, alleging they either intentionally, recklessly, or negligently caused Lauren's death. But a judge dismissed the wrongful death suit on the basis that there was insufficient evidence. However, the Tennessee Court of Appeals overturned that decision, so I think that means that her family has the right to pursue a wrongful death lawsuit against Hannah, Aaron, and Chris again if they wanted to. Neither Hannah, Aaron, or Chris attended Lauren's funeral, and they have always denied involvement in Lauren's death and were never charged with anything. I mean, my opinion is they're lying. I'm just so shocked that it was so... Case closed, she fell, and that's that. This is someone's daughter. This is someone's loved one. How are you not looking into it seriously? Someone's life was lost. I'm sweating now because this makes me angry. That is all I have for today's video. Please let me know your opinions on this because I think it's somewhat of a controversial case. Thank you for spending time with me today and for listening to Lauren's story. I hope you guys are having the best day. If not, go do something to make it the best day. Make somebody happy, and I will see you in my next video. Massive kiss on the forehead to every single one of you.